good.
Yep, when Scott says I can get going, I'll get going. Yes, I do.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back from your break. I hope all of you know where you're at. If you don't, I'd like to introduce you to your session this afternoon, Discovering All the Feels, Universal Screening with bhworks. Very excited about this presentation today. Whether you're a bhworks user or not, I think you will definitely take something away from this presentation. I'm not going to get too far into it because that's their job, but for those of you that don't know, bhworks, we're currently in 48, or will be in 48 of the 56 ISDs by the time the fall comes around. And the biggest thing I hope that you take away from this presentation, like I said, this is not a sales pitch about bhworks. This is about the dream and the vision and the goals that we have at the state of Michigan to tell the legislators the story about the impact of mental health funding. So because we have a platform such as bhworks, we are able to collect data beyond just the number of providers that have been hired, the number of plans of care that have been created, the number of students that are getting services. Because of our platform use and because of the ISDs that have elected to use the use, we're going to be able to start telling those stories that are so important, right? And especially now in this volatile situation where we're not really sure how executive orders are going to impact state budgets. And I'm going to say that, how executive orders impact state budgets. Because remember, our state aid funding in Michigan isn't our state school aid. So we're very fortunate that we have a lot of funding around mental health and safety in our state school aid. But indirectly, we may see some things that impact us at the federal level. But I don't expect that to be an immediate or direct or drastic, but indirectly we're all going to feel something. So because we have funding at the state level for something like bhworks, it's really going to help us go to what Michelle Hutchison and I have been calling our version 2.0, which is that next step of data collection and really telling the story. So as I said, what I'm looking forward to, most excited about, is Amy's going to tell her story of what they're doing in Eastern Upper Peninsula ISD with data and with universal screening. So with that, I am going to now introduce said Amy. So Amy Perrin from the Eastern Upper Peninsula Intermediate School District. And then we also have Lindsay Garrow from bhworks, who's just going to do a brief introduction about their platform. And then we're going to turn things over to Amy. And for housekeeping, just remember at the end, we will share the sketch code for you for those that are interested. If you miss it, just let me know. I will get it to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lindsay Garrow. I am the Client Services Project Manager for the state of Michigan. So of the 45 ISDs that are now using bhworks, I get the privilege of meeting with pretty much all of them and helping to support them. So I have a great job. If you are not familiar with bhworks, not only does it help to support this legislative story that we're trying to tell in terms of the need throughout Michigan, but our system is also set up to be able to capture things like electronic consent, document plans of care in our system. We have over 100 different screening and assessment tools electronically built into our platform. Service logs can be captured within our system, and then we share those with billing for that Medicaid reimbursement. We also promote best practice across the state. So it's this beautiful way of being able to capture all of this information at a state level, aggregate de-identified information, and show how everybody is kind of coming together to work together to support kids across the state. So in addition to our behavioral and mental health software platform, our team has been really busy, not only working on updating features in our existing platform, but we're really, really proud of being able to hopefully implement a school nursing module come this fall, so that we are really looking at students for this whole child approach to care. So there will be more information about that. Within this system, there is a calendar and notification page. There are nursing workflows where we are specifically working with nurses to learn more about what is needed in a school setting and how we can support that in terms of documentation and billing. Reminders for items that are coming due, and data hub integration pieces. So if you guys are interested in learning more about that nursing module, please come see us at our table. If you are not currently using bhworks and you're interested in learning more about what that could look like, again, come see us. We'd love to meet you and be able to tell you more about it. So.
Sorry, one quick thing, the calendar notifications part is also coming to the behavioral world with the new school year.
Woo-hoo. I know we're all excited about that. Yes, yes. But I am not going to take any more time away from Amy Perrin. She is wonderful. She is at the Eastern Upper Peninsula, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about universal screening.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. How nice. Welcome, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. I have to tell you, I'm going to give you a warning. My day did not start out so well. I woke up this morning with my sinuses and one eye that would not open. My coffee ended up all over the desk top, and I flooded the bathroom somehow. So I thought maybe I should go back to bed and try this all over again. But I'm just going to give you fair warning. I don't know what's going to happen here. So I'd like to start off with just kind of polling the room, and with a raise of hand, if you're comfortable, how many people are doing universal screening in their schools? Okay, so there's a few people, kinda, sorta, okay. And then for the schools that aren't doing the universal screeners, how are you selecting students for 31N referrals?
SST meetings.
Okay. So through having like team meetings and student assistant team meetings and those types of things, okay.
Or just the teachers or parent. Student referral.
Right, okay. And so we use that multi-tier system of support, right, when we're trying to identify these students. And so what we do, the whole point of screening the students is to see there's going to be a pool of students who might need that first tier. There might be a classroom that's got some high needs in there that might show us that maybe we need to get some more social emotional learning support in that classroom. And then of course we have the tier 2 supports where we might want to think about some small group therapies. And then that top tier support, we know that's where our 31N referrals are sent for that one-on-one support. Okay, the slide doesn't show it, but there's usually a percentage associated to these. Like that top tier, we want to see maybe 3 to 5%, I believe, of the student population should fall in that top tier. So we don't want like all of the students, you know, we don't want a big, huge pile of referrals so that our social workers can't possibly keep up with that caseload. We want to really pan those services out through this MTSS. Okay, so the reason why we do universal screening, there's a number of reasons, but number one, it does identify strengths and weaknesses right away. And so it ensures that students who are in need of support, they're identified by using evidence-based practice. So universal screeners, and there's a number of them. I'm not here to promote or cheer for either. I know the ones that we use, we've vetted them and they work for us, but everybody's different. And so we have a few that we use because what works well in one school might not work well in another school. Remember, I'm from the UP. I'm from the eastern end of the UP, so we have Pablo Island, we have Mackinac Island. We have some small schools, and then we have some very large schools. So there's a blend. So basically, this is our way of ensuring that every student is being identified by using evidence-based practice. So using universal screeners also protects us against implicit and explicit bias. And it strengthens a sustainable school-based mental health program. And for me, that's been something I've really been worrying about and focusing on since last year, is we're facing 2026. So we know that funding is going to come to an end in December of 2026. And so for these years, we should have been building a sustainable program. And as a licensed mental health provider, and a mental health coordinator, I know how important data is to support those programs, right? So we don't want to go back to our legislature empty-handed. We want to go back with some good measurement. Like, this is when we started, and this is where we're at now. This is what's working, and this is what we identified as things we need to work on. And that's a continuum. So we feel very strongly about that. Fairness and also sustainability of our program. So like I just said, it will provide our legislature with the data to measure our progress in the program, and it will help identify problems and weaknesses in our program. And that's very interesting. As a coordinator, I love that when I see, oh, something new. I had a social worker decide to do 31N all on paper. And I did not find it until I started looking at my data and comparing it to what was in bhworks and what we had over here. And so then we make sure that all of our team members are on the same page, right? We don't do 31N on paper. We put 31N into our system, into bhworks, and that's where we house our clinical school file. Okay, so I want to talk about implicit bias in case, some people may not know, some people may know. But it's always nice to go back and remind ourselves about implicit bias and take this into consideration. We don't know really where our implicit bias land. This is the subconscious feelings and attitudes and prejudices and stereotypes as individuals that we develop due to our upbringing, due to our own personal influences, our thought process. And so implicit bias can include gender bias, affinity bias, confirmation bias, halo effect. Do we remember what those biases even are? And so if we don't, then how do we know we're being fair? So we always have to remind ourselves of that. That is best practice. We want to make sure we're being fair to all of the students in the building. And explicit bias is more of that conscious bias that we know does exist. There are people who are biased against other groups of people. We know this. And it's on purpose, and it's intended. And so there's affinity bias, confirmation bias, and gender bias, and race bias, and all kinds of different bias that impacts people in a different way. And if you don't think it's not impacting students, we better think again. So we really need to make sure that we are being fair to all of our students. And that's what we did at the EUP-ISD. We thought it was the best decision. Looking at universal screening data is only a starting point and should never be the end of the conversation. So this should be used in conjunction with other school data. Universal screening is designed to help you identify who might need extra support. So when we take that data from the universal screening and we look at the school data, the grades, the attendance, the behavior, and see, this might be a good candidate for the 31N program. Or we have a group of kids, group of boys that we might want to invite them to a trails group. One thing that we also did is we ensure that every single one of our mental health providers upon hire are trained in trails tier 2. So they are trained to do that skills building group with the kids. It is not designed to tell you what the support should be, though. So a universal screener is going to give you some data. It's going to identify some at-risk students. It's going to give you a spectrum. And and it will tell you medium risk, high risk, and then that's what we sit down and we take to the SAT team, and that's what we discuss. It's important to be intentional about making sure it is safe, authentic, reliable, and based on evidence-based research. Because there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, if a school administrator just Googled universal screening, I like this one, and it wasn't based on any research, we wouldn't want to recommend that. So the ISD, we actually do a little vetting of our universal screeners. The school admins will bring us, hey, we're interested in this one. Can you dig into it? Can you look into it? And that's what we do. And then we bring it back to our team, our BHAT team, and we just kind of flush it out, like, do we think this will work in our region? This is a slide that I stole from our infamous Scott Hutchins. So going way back to May of 2021, right, when we were all wearing face masks, and we may have still been on Zoom at that time. When we were learning about 31N, they often referred to a fire hose, and that's how it felt, like, how are we going to do this? But this is Scott's slide, and I just put it on here to remind us that Scott said back in 2021 that gatekeeping training for all students, school staff on mental health and threat assessments. These were sort of the things that we needed to focus on for a comprehensive and sustainable way for Michigan schools to improve student behavior health. So, and number 2 on that list is universal screening of all students. This is what they're recommending. Number 3, we need to start thinking about an SEL embedded curriculum. 4, countywide resource mapping. 5, bhworks, care continuation platform. I remember those conversations, when bhworks was new. We had our program housed in Illuminate, and I'm sure many of you have yours. If you're not using bhworks, you're using some other platform. And number 6 was access to mental health providers. So it was hard to find those licensed providers. But here we are today, 4 or 5 years later, and look at the progress that we've made. I have to take a drink of water, sorry. I'm drying up here. So, am I boring you? Is this interesting at all? Okay. All right, I do have a couple of jokes I can throw in there if you want. I'm not very good at jokes, but I did learn a couple last night. You're laughing, I didn't even say the joke yet. Why is that funny?
We're imagining.
You don't have confidence in me. Okay, so yes, the Eastern Upper Peninsula ISD requires universal screeners in order for schools to access our 31N program. Yes, we do. If they want to use our 31N services, our employees, our supports, they have to conduct at least 2 screenings per year. Many do 3. So the schools, I met with each school administrator in person, and I usually try and do that once a year because they're busy people, and we just discuss it. And so they had a firm understanding of why we require it. It's really the only thing that we could think of was a fair way. We didn't want to seem like we were cherry picking our kids. Now, I come from an area that houses 2 tribes. So we have the Sioux tribe of Chippewa Indians, which is the largest tribe in the state of Michigan, and then we have the Bay Mills Indian Community Tribe. So we have a high Native American population, and we want to just make sure that we are treating all of our students fair, And so what we do is we dig into whether the screener is based on evidence, like I've said already, whether it's practical for use, right? There's some screeners out there that, you need a manual just to figure out how to use the dang thing. So is that real practical for our schools to do? Probably not. So we really wanted to flush through that. And then how do our 31N providers feel about the screener? So we want to make sure we get their professional opinions on if this is going to work in that school. And then we bring it back and we just kind of vote, like, do we like this one? Do you want to use this one? Should we offer it? And then the universal screeners that we are currently using, and again, I'm not promoting any certain one. This is just what works for us. The student risk screening scale, which I know did take some heat back in 2021. They have done, there's been some research around this scale to make sure that it is, it's being fair, like it is not something that can be abused. And I haven't found any research yet that suggests that it's not an appropriate screen. It's been around since 1994, widely used around the world, and it works well for us. Mainly, it's free. I mean, a lot of our schools are small, and they just don't have the budget to pay for the universal screening. I mean, their 31AA funds are needed somewhere else, so it's free, it works, it does the trick for us, so we continue to offer that and use it. And then the other one that was brought to us a few years ago was, since we did use Illuminate for our special education support and Medicaid billing and things like that, there was a SABRS student screener in there, universal screener, and it's through a company associated with Illuminate called Renaissance. This was very appealing to several schools, and we did a pilot the first year we did it. It was costly. We paid for it. It is a per pupil type of payment. It's not too bad. It's not super expensive. But our mental health providers really liked it because in this screening, the students took the screening and the teacher. And you want to see some pretty cool data? I'll tell you what, this screening has caught students that we would have never otherwise thought needed support. This screening gave students who needed help the ability to ask for it. I mean, it is well received. It's not free, but 31AA funds does cover the SABRS. We have moved from 2 schools using it to now we have 8 schools using it, and I haven't heard any negative feedback on it. So it's working well. The providers that work in those schools like it. It gives them a lot of good data. And there's other ones that we're looking into. So I'm going to, see, I lost the remote. That's a problem for me. I'm losing my phone and the remote all the time. So let me see where I'm at here. Oh, yes. I'm just going to dive into the student risk screening scale, the SRSS, which is very popular. I sent this to the school administrators or anybody who wants to know more about the SRSS. The company, that website right there, CI3T, they have videos on there that teach you the SRSS. It's very simple. They talk about the research, the data. There's instructional videos on YouTube. And it's just very easy to take. I've gone to schools and presented these videos to the SAT teams, like this is how it works. And as long as the SRSS is done correctly, it works. So it has to be done on the same day, the whole school, and we require it. It starts 30 days after the school year, can't be before that, and then we do one towards the end of the school year. Ideally, they like to have one in the middle, like December, January. Some schools do that, but we don't require it. That's just additional data. Some schools really like to see how their students are doing, because it also, for them, they're looking at the SEL and the groups and the 31N program, so they're looking at that big picture. And I love that some of our schools are at this point sort of really invested in this. This is what the SRSS data sheet looks like. You probably can't see it from there, but basically a teacher will score a student 1 through 4, whether they steal, whether they lie, cheat, or sneak, whether there's behavior problems, peer rejection, and some of you might be saying, oh my gosh, lie, steal, or cheat? That's how I thought, how dare you say that about a child? But guess what? Children lie, steal, and cheat sometimes. I mean, I did when I was a kid. So, I mean, let's be real. And you know what? If they are, we need to know that. Let's rate it and see. So some kids do. So it just goes right down the line: negative attitude, aggressive behavior, emotionally flat. These are important ones too: shy, withdrawn, sad, depressed, Now, if we're looking at kids' whole picture here, we're probably the aggressive kids, the negative attitude, the low academics, those ones are jumping out at us, high needs, high needs. But the kids that fly below the radar are the sad kids, the lonely kids, the emotionally flat kids. And what do we know about school shooters, right? They're not all that, acting out in the classroom. They're the quiet kid, the lonely kid, And if we were screening, they might have been flagged. Maybe not, but it's possible. So that's something to, as we're fighting against school violence and school shooting, which is what Michigan legislation is asking us to do, this is really great data. And so we do this twice a year, and these scores over here, this is what we want to see to start coming down. So this tells us, is our interventions working? Did it work this year? If we do it mid-year, do we need to change our interventions? Maybe it's not anxiety. Maybe there's something else going on. So it's just, for us, this really worked well, and it's K through 12. I'm sorry?
Actually, no, it's my phone. It malfunctioned, sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so this is what the SABRS looks like. This is a teacher survey, so they're rating kids never, sometimes, often, almost always, talking about social behavior. Are they arguing? Are they cooperating with other peers? Academic behaviors, emotional behaviors. They go right through this checklist. And then that all comes out, and then there's scoring at the end. This is all based on research, so it's very interesting. This is the student assessment. So the student will go through, I argue with others, never, sometimes, often, always. I get along with my peers. I lose my temper. I disrupt class. I am respectful. I like school. I am ready for class. I get good grades. It just goes right down. I feel sad. I feel nervous. And it just gives kids a way to privately kind of run this scale. And then this is like what it would look like on the computer screen, never, sometimes, often, always. So there's SABRS offers different ways for the students to participate in the survey. Then SABRS pushes out these types of reports which compare the teacher and the student. And there's so many different reports that you can run with this program. And this is, usually if you go to a SAT meeting, you might be looking at this type of data. And then you want to always go and see, is what we're doing working? If it's not, we need to up our game, right? This is another teacher behavior report compared to the student. I think this is interesting. Sometimes they're not correlating real well, right? The student's perspective might be a little different than the teacher's perspective. And then I added this one. This is the SECA. bhworks does have this in their programming, but I believe this is K through 5th grade, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong on that. This is one that we are currently digging into because it's offered through bhworks. So we want to make sure we learn about it, we check into the research, and if it's something that any of our schools want to use, I believe it's free too. So we want to offer some more free choices to our schools. Maybe this one will work better for our smaller schools. Who knows? This is another one that is available in bhworks. So the SRSS is available in bhworks, the SECA, and this is the TOCA. This is the Teacher Observation Children Assessment. And so it has another scoring that all adds up at the end, and then the students are rated, basically whether or not they're at risk and what level of risk they are at. This is another one that I am digging into and I'm researching, and if it pans out well, we will introduce this to our schools next year as an option to use. So schools will need to pick which universal screener for the year, and they won't be able to change it. I mean, once you start that you're locked in for the school year. I just wanted to show you this because when I was hired at the ISD, I was hired to build the program, the 31N program. And what we do is we require our mental health providers, our 31N providers, to complete a 31N monthly report. So we want to know how many referrals are coming in, how many students were eligible, how many weren't eligible, and then what's their total number of students, how many are carrying over from month to month, how many are discharged, how many crisis. We just ask a whole bunch of questions. I think there's about 19 questions that we're collecting on. And what I do with that data, this is just an example. This shows us sort of from year to year the growth of referrals. So from 2019 to 20, the referrals were going up, then the pandemic hit, they went down a little bit while we were sorting things out, and then look they've been going up since 21 to 23, big time, just whoosh, everybody felt that, high need, pressure. And then it looks like, I'm gonna be really curious to see what this year's data looks like, but it looks like it's starting to pan out a little bit into 2024, so. And I think that's to be expected because of the pandemic we went through, and also as we're polishing up our program, we're gonna see some stabilization in our data. And that's just one example of one of the charts that we use. So if we think about this in universal screening, the students that are at risk, and then taking all of our screens from all of our schools and putting it into bhworks, and then being able to run not only just individual student data, but school-wide data to see, is what we're doing working? You know, where can we improve? Where can we fix things? And that's my goal moving into this year, and bhworks was good enough, kind enough to put that SRSS into their program, because a lot of our schools still use that. So I think, you know, I've got years of data to put in there, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that comes out. And also, that data we can provide to the MDE, to provide to the legislature, to support the growth of our program and the students, especially in the Eastern Upper Peninsula, where our life is a little bit harder, right? We have longer winters. We don't have the economic base. We have a lot of unemployment. I mean, we house, we have 2 tri-county domestic violence programs. Like I said, a high number of Native American population. We have a lot of need up there. Not to mention, you need a car. I mean, we're rural. And sometimes you need a plane to get to Mackinac Island in the wintertime. There's no cars over there. So we have all kinds of different things up there. But so it's just something I think it's really important data that will help us. I guess that's the end of my slide presentation. So does anybody have any questions or, yeah?
Curious about, for bhworks, any of those that we use, we have to do a referral and enter the student's name that way, right? Do you have to get consent as well?
For universal screening, yeah, so you're talking, I think, more of like an indicated screening, so you're identifying a student that you may want to work with. At that point, you would get consent and you do your referral and all of that. Amy's referencing more of like a universal screening. So let's say we want to do a population of students, whether it is, you know, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, or an entire school building. You know, there are options in consent. You could do a passive consent versus an active consent. So passive is more or less like, hey, we're planning to conduct this screening. Here's kind of some of the questions we're going to be asking. This is the name of the screener. If you do not want your child to participate in this screening, please sign this form and send it back. Active consent is, okay, if we're going to do this screening, we have to have this permission slip back, consenting us or allowing us to be able to move forward with that screening session. So you wouldn't necessarily need a referral for something like that. We have the ability to upload student rosters. We can kind of bulk assign these screening sessions. It kind of just depends on who's conducting that screening. So there's all kinds of things to consider. So if you have more questions,
Oh, yeah, it's coming out.
let us know.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to talking to you later. I'm Alicia Schwaber from Char-M ISD.
Oh, yes. Hi, Alicia.
So, I love how you've connected all of the work and especially kind of tracking the referrals. I would love to talk to you more about your monthly, the questions that you ask, you know, and then
Okay, yes.
Which has been really nice for some of our districts and kind of integrating that with trails or whatever SEL programs that they're using. Ideally, I would love for all of the districts to use the SSIS.
Yeah.
Because I'm aware of the SSRS too, but I think it's kind of like all in one, right? And
The SRSS, yes, it's K through 12. There's two different screenings for K through 8th and then high school. Two different, but they're tabbed.
yeah, so the SSIS has been a great tool for us.
Good.
So Lindsay, I wanted to ask if there was a way to have the SSIS integrated. I guess that's for a different, or if any other districts have used the SSIS.
Charles just whispered in my ear here that it is copyrighted, so that is one, if it's public domain, it's something that we could potentially look into building, but if it's copyrighted, that's not something we typically would build.
Oh, okay, okay.
Maybe with permission or something, who knows? Yeah.
We're struggling, one of the things we're working on is that passive versus active, because right now, just different schools, it's important, I think, to capture both referrals, meaning, oh, a teacher said Susie Q might be able to use the service, but that's not necessarily documented. What's documented is the referral that actually becomes services that are.
Yeah, so 31N, for us, we follow the process of referrals come to us either through the school administrator. The school administrator needs to know who's being referred to the program, so that would come either from the SAT team, from the student, or from the parent, right? Students and parents can refer into the program too, but we still want them funneled through our school administrator. This year, we're moving into electronic referral only. We're moving away from paper, and bhworks has this wonderful electronic referral system, which I love, because it'll flag me and let me know that a school just submitted a referral. Then I could go in and we can either have it automatically assigned, or I can assign that student. And here's why this is important, because we know mental health providers are busy, right? And paper referrals might get pushed to the side. I don't know. I'm not saying that happens, but it might happen, and might disappear. I don't know. I just don't feel real confident in that system. And we want to make sure that our school is being heard, and when they put in that referral, that we're responding to it as an ISD. So we're going electronic next year.
And I want to add that the way you get them to do the electronic is you share that story. That, hey, we are trying to tell a story about the number of referrals that you're making. So when Miss Lincoln stops our provider in the hall and says, can you see him? Of course we would love to see. We would
Yeah.
love to at least do more assessment. But we need to capture all those numbers.
Yep.
So could you help us try to capture all those numbers so that you can keep our provider that I know you value? And
Yeah.
when you have that question, they're willing to do that little bit of extra work and do that referral through the system. And
Right.
because they understand that bigger why.
Yeah, and we wouldn't open up, once we get that referral, then our provider does that whole evaluation, and they're looking into all of the data. So just because one teacher is having an issue with a student doesn't necessarily mean that student's going to be eligible for the 31N program. And so we want to, they might be, but we want to look at what other data is supporting this.
So who puts in that level of referral, just who gets access to that?
The
Passive, or I'm not sure, just that, oh, I think Susie Q.
So what I say to teachers, I refer the teacher to go speak to their administrator and to work through the administrator and to determine, you want to make sure the administrator's in agreement with the teacher that this is a student that should be referred. Because remember, we need parental consent. So we need to, somebody's going to reach out to that student's parent, and, so the administrator always has to be informed. So I always just tell the teacher, I refer them to their administrator. I'd love to, take a deeper look into this, but I'm going to need more information, and I get that from the administrator, not from the teacher.
And that's through bhworks or separate?
Well, referring a teacher to the administrator is just within the school itself. So they should take their concerns to their administrator. and then ask about the 31N program and handle it that way. That's how we would do it. And then that just kind of protects our providers from being approached like that constantly. And that happened years ago. We don't see that as much anymore, tell you the truth. It's working. Now this year, or moving into next year with the electronic referrals, I'm thinking we're gonna see a soar in number for referrals with the electronic referral. So the school will designate someone who's going to be in charge of sending that referral, and it's not going to be our 31N provider.
Okay, that's what I was trying to.
There's gotta be a separation there.
But the other thing that I think built in that is helpful is the referral details list. Because it requires, if you're gonna put in a referral, it's not like, whoop, there you go.
Right.
Now go do the work.
Yeah.
It requires that team of people that are making decisions, what, that behavioral health team, the child study team, whatever. But one person is in charge of it, but it requires them to say, what have you tried in tier 1? What have you tried in tier 2?
Yep.
What are these reasons? What, have you talked to the parents? It doesn't
Yeah.
just be like, oh, there you go, it's all on you. It requires them to like step through all those different tiers. So
Yeah, and then kind of let's try these things first. Also, just because a referral is sent in does not necessarily mean the 31N providers, they're going to get the service. So we still do that whole evaluation. The provider does, the licensed provider, and they determine which tier. They'll go talk to the school administrator and like, I'm not finding much, or I did some observations, I'm not seeing it, and they might make some recommendations to try, like what you're saying, before that third level. Because we don't want to be pulling kids out of classrooms, right, unless we absolutely have to. Because, yes,
I'm just curious how using the universal screens has helped you build out tier 1 or tier 2.
oh, for sure. So the screens, depending on the school, but it identifies if a student has like a score of 18. So all of those categories are measurements from 1 to 4. Let's say they have a very high score of 18, or I've seen them up to 21. Those are the high-risk kids, like, oh, we want to take a look at the student. It will also, it breaks it into high risk, medium risk, and then, we would sit down with the school administrator and the SAT team and say, there's a large group of kids in this age group. I might want to do a trails group with these kids and see how that does with them. So it's kind of like casting that net out. So those screens are very important. It can also say, oh, look at this classroom. Wow, all the kids are in high, what's going on in this whole class? Sometimes that happens. There's a class right now, and everybody knows that one of the schools that we have is very high needs, every single student in there. So is it something that we need to handle in the whole class? Do we need to go into that classroom and do some works? And a screener will show us that data.
Is it just your providers who are offering like groups, tier 2 stuff?
No, Trails is opened up to other, like school counselors can do Trails group. So they've broadened that.
But do they do it, is my question. 'Cause I
Yes.
think for us, but
Yes.
tier 2 seems to be lacking, and I'm wondering, how do we bolster this?
Sometimes, and I take this back to my leadership every year, like something to think about. Do we need to require at least one group a year? Something to think about. Because remember the idea, we can quickly just referral third tier, and then pretty soon your provider's gonna be burned out. They can't keep up with it all. So then how many groups have you done? None, because I don't have any time. Well, that's why. So we really gotta, if we do the universal screener right, we're looking at that data right, we should be able to spread the love, right? We should be able to get a broader picture, cast that net out, and help more students that way. Because we can't possibly see every student one-on-one.
So that leads me to another question, if I may. I am curious, when we have discussed groups amongst my team of clinicians, I use the cast the net, a wider net, right? And I get a lot of pushback. You just want us to build our caseload. How many students do we have to see? Which was part of the reason I asked about And so what kind of conversations have you had with your clinicians about caseloads and their capacity to do groups and individuals at the same time?
Was there a question?
Yeah, I'm looking for some helpful language to use maybe.
So,
Like how have you had those
we
conversations?
require all of our providers upon hire to be trained with Trails Tier 2. That's free.
We do too, and they have to do tier 1 first. So you have to do tier 1 to get to tier 2.
Yeah, we did Tier 2. We started there. That's what we did. We started with Tier 2. In fact, Tier 1, we did that, we just started implementing that 2 years ago. We were really focused on our program, building our program, the one-on-one, and then the Tier 2. So we've really, and now with Tier 1, sure, we have a mishmash of SEL throughout our whole region, but you know what? We have a mishmash of SEL. That's good. You know, some people are like, we should require all schools to do one No, you can't, because of school climate. And schools know what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Teachers know what works for them, what doesn't work. So they might take pieces of Trails. They might take pieces of Cell Web. They might do some zones of regulation. They might, you know, or I had one school who implemented Navigate Compass 360 and well received, K through 12. We have second step school. I mean, you know, there's a variety, but you know, they're doing it. So that's a good thing. And we are trying to figure out how we can measure that growth too. I think that's going to probably boil down into a percentage. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess I was just hoping for like conversations that you've had with people that might be helpful. Maybe you have an idea because
We just do it, like, some of the things, if we are going to do a small group, a local school staff has to also do a small group. Like, so if you look at the universal two-year data, they pick a group, we pick a group, you know? And we've also done it where we do groups together, like, so I'll do a group as long as there's a local school staff that can, like, facilitate with me as a provider. Because I think some of our providers too struggle a little bit with the management of a small group. So having like a school staff member there to support some of the management part has helped them feel more confident in like delivering the material when there's a local school staff member in the room helping with some of the I don't know, because they're used to one-on-one, so then we throw in, you know, 4 or 5 students and that's just different than what they're used to.
yeah.
So we ask for like local school support in facilitating those. I don't know that's what you were looking for, but it's just something that we know
those
about,
are great
that
ideas.
providers are not very confident in, you know, having something different than a one-on-one counseling session.
Like some of our split-funded providers who are doing special ed and 31N some of them are getting very overwhelmed with the one-on-one caseload. And so I just received an email a couple days ago because she was missing the deadline. I needed my monthly report, and she's like, I don't have a lot of time for 31N. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's May. What do you mean you don't have enough time for 31N? And what does this mean? And I really kind of, in a nice way, said, how can we support you? Tell me more about this. Like, is your caseload too high? How many groups are you doing? Have you done any groups? Are teachers pulling you into the classroom? Can you do second step? Can we do zones? Can we do, we can't be all things to all people. So we have to prioritize, and we might have to sit down with our provider here and there and say, we need some time management. And I've done that before as a coordinator with my boss. We'll sit down. One girl couldn't keep up with her paperwork, so she got a paperwork day. This is the day you're doing all your paperwork. You see students on these days, but this is the day. It's time management. Sometimes they need that little help and support. And then a lot of times the answer is, no, I haven't had time to do a group. I'm too busy. But guess what? You wouldn't be so busy. You wouldn't have all that one-on-one if you were doing the groups, right? So that's what we're going to be working on.
Also to that building in that.
Okay.
understanding that It's not one more thing, like that district-wide, you've got to go above our providers to say, this is all, we're all doing this thing. That's the part I think that happens, and it feels like it's all on them.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
So do you want to hear my joke now? So my son is he's changed his major several times, and he's a deep thinker. And he's a philosophy major right now. He might change that again. So, he loves philosophy. So how do you think the unthinkable? How do you think the unthinkable? With an Ithberg. I didn't get it either. So think of the Titanic. How do you think the unthinkable with an Ithberg? Then I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, that's a good one.
And with that, let's give her a huge If you would like to learn more, Jen Van Tol, who is with us here, also has a presentation tomorrow. Here is your sketch code